Hello, this is Mike Richardson from Maximizer Software, and welcome to our short session today. It's going to last about 30 minutes. We've got quite a varied audience from around the globe, so good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. The session today, we're going to concentrate on looking at how you can use CRM to work on where your next deal is coming from and to increase sales leads and sales opportunities. So in terms of the session today, very brief agenda. I'm just going to do a very short introduction to who Maximizer Software are, and then we're going to move straight on to 3 leading questions. We're going to be looking at who your best clients are and what they look like in terms of all sorts of different parameters. We're then going to take a look at how you can find more of similar type of clients, and then finally we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about delivering customer success and how to get referrals from your customer base. In terms of Maximizer Software, we're a global software vendor. Our head office is actually in Vancouver in Canada. I'm actually based in our EMEA office, which is actually in Bracknell in the UK. We also have an office out in Australia and a virtual office down in South Africa. As well as the Maximizer offices, we also have channel partners all around the globe. So pretty much any territory that you may be based in, we have a partner that, or ourselves can cover that territory. In terms of who we deal with, I've put some pretty varied clients in here. We pretty much work in every industry you can think of, although there are specific sectors that we do particularly well in. I've shown a number of business advisors, consultants in this presentation, for example, a couple of banks, travel organizations, manufacturing companies in here. So there's quite a varied mix on this page. So we do tend to work with all sorts of different companies all over the world. So moving swiftly on, the first aspect of the session today, we want to take a look at who your best clients are and what they actually look like. And by what do they look like, now I've put this in as a bit of a joke. I don't physically mean what do they look like, obviously. I mean what do they look like in terms of various different parameters that you may want to capture. So to give you an idea of the sort of things you may want to look at when you're profiling your clients, we have this idea in Maximizer that we actually use internally of something called an ideal customer profile. And what we do is actually sit down once a year and actually think about where our deals are coming from and which customers we're actually generating business from. And when we start to do that, we need to look at a number of different parameters. And as an example, we look at the geographical region where we're closing business. It may be, for example, that a certain country or territory is in growth mode at the moment, in which case there's more opportunities for us to sell CRM, for example. It may be that there's a certain industry or sector that is good for us at a period of time. For example, with Maximizer over the last year, we've identified a trend where we're particularly good in high-tech manufacturing, for example. We also tend to do pretty well with business advisors and consultants. Historically, we've done very well in the finance sector and so on. So we can track that information and it gives us a lead into where we should be concentrating our marketing efforts to actually generate more customers. We may want to look at the size of business, the turnover of a company, the profit, the number of employees they have, etc. Depending on what types of products and services you actually sell, each of these parameters we're discussing will be more or less important. For example, some people may deal with, for example, with small businesses across the board. Some people may deal with larger organizations just in the finance sector, for example. So you need to take these sort of things into consideration when you're setting up your database to track this information. You need to be able to segment the data by any of these sort of parameters that are important for you. Another area that we track, we really try to work out at Maximizer who our most profitable customers are. By profit, now we're not just looking at revenue. Now certain customers can cost a lot of money in terms of support. Certain larger clients, for example, can quite often always ask for a specific deal or a specific percentage off a deal when we're putting it together, whereas a smaller company may not do that. So you may find pound for pound that some of the smaller clients are actually more profitable for you than your larger customers. So that's a decision, if you've got the information, you can take, and you can really start to evaluate which customers actually fit that ideal profile that we're talking about. Before I move on to the next slide, I'm just going to step into Maximizer and show you some of the ways that you can actually segment data based on a few of these parameters that I've been talking about. So this is how you go about finding your sort of ideal customer, by analyzing the data that you've collected within your business solution or CRM solution. So I'm just going to step out of the presentation now, move across and find my Maximizer. I know on the session today we actually have a number of people who've never seen the Maximizer product, so very briefly I'll just explain how this works. So this is my Maximizer CRM solution. There's four sort of areas of the screen here. I've got one of them hidden, which is the alarms that pop up. I've actually delayed those for about 4 hours so they don't interrupt us today, but normally we'd have another panel on this side that shows us any alerts or alarms that are going on at the moment. The section over on the left hand side here is just the navigation panel, and I can actually slim that down if I want a bit more space. So this gives us access to the various modules in the CRM product. I'm actually working in an area of the product called the address book, which is our basic company and contact information screen. The top of the screen, you'll see I've got a list of companies, some of them in different colors. This is just a list of demonstration companies in what we call a column view. So for example, we've got a company called Food and Downs here. We've got the industry that we're in, we've got the region that they're based, we've got an estimation of the size company they are, what their annual sales are for us, so on and so forth. So we've got a bunch of fields in the database that are actually profiling these clients to some extent in this top view. One of the easiest things to do with this data now, for example, is if we wanted to very quickly just look at all the companies in order based on their size through this size of client field, I can click on here and it will automatically reorganize the data based on this field. That will work for any field, so I'll do the same thing on annual sales, for example, and you'll notice now that it's put it in numeric order, and we can see at the bottom there we've got a wholesaler called Red and White Merchants, who are actually our largest reseller in terms of annual sales, based in the UK, and they're an agent or distributor, for example. So we've created a number of fields in this CRM database that then allow us to profile these customers. The way that's done, you'll notice as I move down the various records in this top window, for example, I click on Food and Dine, you'll notice that the information at the bottom of the screen has changed so that it matches that record. So the window at the bottom of the screen in Maximizer terms is known as a following window, because the information that's shown on the screen now is following the record that we're specifically looking at in the top half of the screen. So if I move down to Henry's Vines, for example, just here, you'll notice the information at the bottom has now changed to Henry's Vines. You'll also notice here in the bottom part of the screen, I've got a section that says Key Fields. I'm actually looking at some key fields here called General Customer. I can actually have other lists of key fields, which I won't go into any detail today, but this is how we can profile our customers. Effectively, we create fields based on the client that allows us to segment what they look like. So we've got things like the first day we contacted them, the last visit we had, how much they sell every year, who's looking after them in terms of sales account management, what their main interest is in terms of dealing with us, what industry they're in, and the size of client, and so on. If I continue to scroll down, you see we can have additional fields for the region, the territory, basically whatever you want. So you, as a user, can create these fields that match the information that you want to track within your business. The reason we're doing this is ultimately, as we work with these clients, we want to capture this information to work out which of these clients are actually our best clients to work with. And what we're looking for are patterns. Now, we can do that in a way that I've described, maybe by looking at the size of client or the territory or whatever through this view at the top, but that's not a very ergonomic way of doing things. It would take quite a lot of time and analysis just looking at data to actually work out who my ideal customers are in that top list. So what we can do off the back of adding these fields and adding data into the database is run a series of dashboards against the data. So what I'm going to quickly skip to now from this screen is to move to our dashboards. Now, the way that dashboards are created are through a specific search. So you'll notice I've got a button at the top of the screen here, third one in, called Search. And what I've actually done to get the data that I want to analyze is to run something called an advanced search. So I click on this option for an advanced search, and as an example, let's pick up the sort of thing you may want to search on. So in this case, someone searched for City of Vancouver, where someone's a customer. Let's have a look in the catalog searches. So these are searches that people have saved. I can, for example, have all sorts of different saved or catalog searches in here. I'm going to pick the one called Demo Data because that's the one I'm using today. And if I retrieve that search, it will actually pick demonstration records. So this search here can be a combination of any of those fields on the database. In this case, I've just called it Demo Data, so it gives me the data that we're looking at. So before we create a dashboard, we would create a search that allows the data to appear in this top screen. We can then run the dashboard against that search. So this particular dashboard, for example, I've called Company Profiling. It has a number of different indicators in the dashboard that give us an idea of the sort of businesses that we typically work with. If we look at company size, it looks as though it's quite level there. We're roughly doing £100,000 with each of the different company sizes. So there's no real telltale sign there as to which sort of client we're better off working with, whether it's a large one, small one, or medium one. When we look at the region, it's a bit more interesting. We seem to do a lot of business in mainland Europe. We do a fair amount of business in the United Kingdom and a little bit less in the United States Midwest. So it tells us a little bit more. So generally the company size doesn't matter to us. We seem to do quite well with that. We tend to like to do business in mainland Europe. The main people that are interested in our products, with this particular example business I'm working with, it's actually a wine company. So you'll notice that a lot of the fields are related to that. You'll see that in terms of the main interest of customers in dealing with us, they either want to sell our products in a restaurant or bar, or they want to act as an agent or distributor. So that's pretty important. In terms of the industrial sector that they actually work in, most of them are restaurants, but we do have some wholesalers as well. And then we have a few retailers, but it looks as though the best place for us selling our products seems to be restaurants. So we seem to do a lot of restaurants, primarily mainland Europe, all sorts of size of restaurant, for example. If we take that a little bit further and actually look at where these clients came from in the first place, we've got a field here called a lead source. Now at Maximizer we actually take this a stage further, but I'll explain how this field is working on this database and then explain what we actually do ourselves, which is quite interesting. In terms of the lead source here, we've split it down quite vaguely basically. So we've got a website, whether someone came through our website initially, whether they came through an advertisement, whether they came through some sort of telemarketing campaign through a phone call, referral, whatever it may be. We seem to be particularly good at doing direct mail shots and picking up clients from that in this case, which is quite strange in this day and age, but apparently on this database this is where our main customers have come from, both a combination of internet referrals and direct mail campaigns. So it starts to give you a flavor of where our customers are coming from and what sort of profile there may be. So this sort of starts to give you an example really of who your ideal customers may be. We just flip back to the presentation. So we've covered most of the stuff in here. I've gone through the column views with you, complex searches and dashboards. I'm just going to move on to the next slide here. So now we've got to the stage where we've got a pretty good idea who our perfect customers are, or an idea of some of the parameters that make up our ideal client base. Now how do we start to find more of those same types of customer? So we've identified that we've got a certain type of client, tend to do really well with them. Now we want to find more. So we know the profile of those clients, but then, as I mentioned before, the ideal of lead source and where someone came from starts to be pretty important. Where did we actually find those ideal customers that we're working with at the moment? Because chances are, if we found those customers there, it may be a very, very good way of finding some future clients and prospects using the same methodology. So we've identified that using lead source might be quite useful, and as I've said before, that could be now items like an event, a referral, website, even aspects such as LinkedIn, social media may give you your results. What we actually find at Maximizer though in the marketing team is that we need to take that a step further. Now we may identify that we get a lot of leads from events, for example, but then you want to drill down a bit more and actually see what type of event. Is it a local event? Is it a national event? Is it something at a big exhibition center? Is it a trade event? Or is it just a local gathering or networking session? So what we have at Maximizer is something we call a specific lead source, which actually gives you the next level of detail. So in our database, for example, I'm not going to go into too much today because our specific lead source field is quite onerous. It's got maybe 100 and odd items in there, but it does tell you specifically where a lead or customer came from. So think about that in terms of profiling your data. Always track where someone came from and maybe also track specifically exactly where they came from. Then you can use that information in the future, and it's very, very valuable. Once you've got that information, you can start to target campaigns. You can potentially buy data. You can tailor your campaigns to specific industries, specific geographies. Does your website work, for example, or do events work better? So you can start to use the best methodology for finding those ideal customers that we've been talking about. We've covered a little bit on searches and dashboards. There is another methodology we can use in Maximizer now in order to profile clients, and it's pretty advanced. So just to give you an idea of another dashboard, before I do that, we can actually analyze deals as well as customers. So we might want to look at where our specific deals are. This is an example on this database of which companies have got deals with us at the moment that we're working on. So we can see, for example, that this company called Food and Dance has got quite a lot in our pipeline. in terms of won deals, food and dance again have been very, very popular. So obviously they're a good one to look at in terms of profiling. Now, what stage are we at with these various deals? What region are we winning the deals in? You notice Southeast is dominated by this food and dance company. So you have to be a little bit careful with data. You might find that one company is totally blurring the lines around what's going on. So another example of a dashboard here, this time really related to deals. What I'm going to do is just switch now to look at the deals and then show you how you can analyze these in a bit more detail. If I click on the dashboard, it will move me to the sales opportunity module, which is our deals module. So this is a list of all the deals that I'm working at the moment, the various stages they're in, who competitors are, which product we're selling, and so on. So there's quite a lot of information in here. And it works the same way as the other module I showed you before. This time it's the deals at the top of the screen and the details for a specific deal at the bottom of the screen. But what I really wanted to show you here is the capability of running reports. So as well as standard reports in Maximizer, we have this neat feature now called Excel reporting. And I'm going to go to this report that I've mocked up before. This is looking at the data that's in the screen at the moment. It's called Mike Sales Report. It's actually doing an analysis on the various deals that are there at the moment. So what it's done is very, very quickly, it's taken the data out of Maximizer. It's pushed it into an Excel spreadsheet. You'll notice in this spreadsheet, we've got an opening page or tab here that shows us various reports. Each of those reports simply sits in a tab in the Excel spreadsheet. First thing I need to do is just click to generate the reports to make sure it's got the latest data. And then if, for example, I go to the deal analysis report, it will take us to this tab here at the bottom called deal analysis. And this allows us to look at the data in a certain way. If any of you have used pivot tables in Excel, you'll see what's going on here. It's just a basic pivot of the Maximizer data, but it's very, very powerful in terms of what you can do. So at the moment, we're looking at the team name in terms of segmenting the data. We're looking at the deal size in euros. We're looking at the various categories of products and so on. We're looking at a certain fiscal quarter and a certain month. If I want to change this, so instead of looking at the team, I'm looking at the person that's actually leading the opportunity or leading the deal. I can drag that into my grid here now, and you notice it's now segmented the data by the leader. If I want to put products in here, I can move that products in there instead of categories. I can move the categories out, and you'll see very, very quickly how you can manipulate the data here. So now I've got the data split by the leader of the opportunity and the products and services that they're selling on a particular deal. So pretty much with this Excel stuff, you can pivot data any way you want. And if you want to know more about pivot tables in Excel, we did do a very short webinar that shows how to do that. Not specifically on Maximizer, but basically on how you can use pivot tables. There's a bunch of other reports in here which I won't go through in much more detail, but some of them are graphical, some of them are just data, and there's some pre-built stuff, and you can obviously change these reports yourselves as well. So that's an outline of how to use the reporting, the dashboards, and the column views in Maximizer to segment data and to find and profile new business. Finally, I just want to touch on the last topic, is how you can look to get great referrals and deliver customer success for your clients. One of the key things in business is to make sure that you understand your client's business. And one of the aspects that where companies are starting to understand more and more is one of the key things is to understand who the prospects and clients are of your customers. Now, what are your customers actually trying to do? What do they do in terms of their product and service? And how does your product help them to do that? Now, how does your product actually help your customers in their business, help them to generate more business and be more effective and so on? So you need to understand your customers in terms of their business and their motivation, and what does your products and service do to add value to what your clients do. Very, very important. You should have that really as an elevator pitch, shall we say, or a standard line that all your staff are aware of throughout the company. So it sort of drives the way you run your business. Just to expand this, so having understood your client's business, you really need to work out then how your product or service can help them. So in terms of this, delivering success for your client, you really need to have a clearly documented process in terms of how you work and how you actually run sales of your product to those clients. The stages that you go through, the timescales and so on should be documented and understood by everyone in your team. An example again of the way we run this at Maximizer in our sales team, we have a very straightforward process which goes through an initial qualification where we have a discussion with yourself or the prospect to discover what you're trying to achieve in your business and how our product may be able to help. We do a bit of a sanity check called verification, where we do a bit of background work to make sure that our product actually fits what you're trying to achieve. We then start to work with you on what the proposal for a solution may look like and in what time scale, and obviously at that stage we start to talk about how much it might cost and how much services you need and so on. Final stages would be the evaluation of our proposal with you and running through that so you understand exactly what we plan to do and the timescales involved. And then finally, after any objection handling and any questions remaining, it's then just a case of paperwork and closing the deal. So that's the sort of sales process we broadly go through. Most companies, regardless of what industry they're in, go through a very similar process. So start to map that out, and obviously in a bit more detail than I've got here, but it's very, very useful that everyone in your organization understands that process, and indeed that your client understands that process when you start to work with them. Final thing we just want to touch on is how you can deliver success for your customers we've spoken about, but how do you get referrals from that? Well, one of the aspects that we've started looking at Maximizer is what we call a customer success program. So we have a couple of people here in the organization that routinely talk to clients and see how they're using our product and whether they're using it effectively or not. It can be a very, very useful way having that discussion, especially with clients that are very successful with our products, of getting referrals to new customers. If you don't ask, you don't get. But quite often, if you ask your clients, if you're doing a lot of work with them, you really help them, they will potentially give you referrals, and they will help you with case studies, etc. So one of the key things in terms of measuring success, now a few ideas of the things that we do here at Maximizer that you could possibly do as well. What's the return on investment for the product or service that you provided? Has it helped the client to get new product sales? Has it helped them to become more efficient, etc.? How do you find this out? Well, you could have phone calls as we do. We also do some surveys. We also do telephone account reviews. Another way is to get a group of customers together in what we call a workshop and actually get a discussion group going at any given time. In terms of getting people to do referrals and case studies, quite often, now the immediate thing is you think, well, I might have to pay them to do that, or I might have to do this or do that. Think about what you can do. There may be products that you can give them. There may be time in terms of services and so on. It doesn't always have to be a sort of monetary value or a gift, for example. Now, quite often you find clients who you've helped a lot are quite keen and able, willing to refer and to give you case studies without any sort of additional incentive. Finally, just to give you an example of our customer success review. So in our, this is sort of a snapshot of our database with a client that had a customer success review over the last few days, actually based in Guildford, radio station. So there's quite a lot of stuff in here. Radio station, you've got an idea of what they do. They've got 13 users. Their next expiry date for the software is in May next year. We've got some health scores, satisfaction scores, the value of our product to their business, and so on. If you want any more information about this, or you want to run through this with one of my colleagues to give you more of an idea of how we're doing that, then certainly get in touch. We're tracking all sorts of things, as you can imagine. Now, what aspects of the product they're using, how it's deployed, how it's been adopted in the organization, what benefits have they got in terms of centralized data, profiling clients, all that sort of stuff. Now, this is the sort of thing you can consider with your clients when you do an account review on a routine basis. Start to capture some of this information, and if you can do, put some sort of value to it, some sort of number, and then you can score individual clients in terms of how successful or unsuccessful they've been in terms of using your products and services. I believe I've run out of time, or run over time today. In this presentation, there's a couple of additional slides at the end. We'll send you the PowerPoint. It's just really to explain why we believe Maximizer is a good CRM product to choose in terms of our company and in terms of our product. And finally, I'd like to thank you for your time today. Hopefully you find the session useful. And as I say, if you want to get any more information around what you've seen today, please just give us an email or phone call, and we can follow that through with you as soon as possible. So again, thank you for your time today, and goodbye for now.